Okay, is it good now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, fine. I'm sorry for the delay. I guess all good things is always the HaRav that's trying to interrupt. Speak about a little bit opening packages. It sounds like the Olam already to Zachariah a little bit. When you're dealing with opening packages, cans, boxes, bags, there could be a question of 5 different isurim that you could be dealing with. There could be a shaila of soiser. We notice then a binyan vestira. It's a question of soiser. There could be a question of makbeh patish, if you're making a nice pesach. There could be a question of korea. You're ripping something. There could be a question of machatich. And if you're ripping words, there could be a question of moichik. So today we're going to concentrate on the malacha of soiser. The question is there any heter? And what is the heter mitzad the malacha of soiser to break cans, boxes, Cheerios boxes, bags, to be able to get food out from there on Shabbos? So everything starts from the Mishnah, Shabbos Kuf Mem Vav. The Mishnah says like this: Shoiver Adam as a chavis, lechol hemena groigus. A person's allowed to break the chavis to be able to get the groigus, to get the figs out of there. That means you shouldn't be mechavan lasses kli, which means you shouldn't make a pesach yofa. That would be a shaila of makav patish. But if he does it on eifin or shvira, there's no problem on Shabbos. Now the obvious question is, why isn't there a problem of stira? What happened to malach of stira? So the emissaries, from what I understand, the Olam already learned Shin Yud Gimel. So Olam knows that it's a machlokes in Gemara if yesh binyan stir b'kelim or ein binyan stir b'kelim. We paskin ein binyan stir b'kelim. Or it's mavur in the Gemara that's only if it's mahudik. That's what it's a machlokes if yesh binyan stir b'kelim or ein binyan stir b'kelim. But ba'ifan of the kua, that's the kuli yalma, there's a problem. The question is, what is that problem? According to the sheet of Rashi, Daf Mem Zayin, and other places, the Isser is makbeh patish. According to the sheet of Taisus and the other Rishonim, the Isser is binyan v'stira. That means even though ain't binyan stira b'kelim, that's only if it's just mahudik. But if it's tekua, then they also mask him that there is binyan. We'll get to soon exactly what the bir hadvarm is. So the question is, Bishlam, if you hold like the sheet of Rashi holds that there's no such a thing of binyan and stira b'kelim. The only problem that is possible by Kalim is of tekua is a shaila makah patish. So then the Mishnah is very poshut. The reason why you're allowed to break it is because there's no isser of soiser. So it's a binyan. The only isser that's possible in Kalim is makah patish. So if someone's machav malas is clear good, but just by destroying a keli, it doesn't pass to have the malacha of soiser. So like Rashi, the Pshat in the Mishnah, the Chayr is very poshut. And then it says, if you look at Rashi in the Mishnah, Rashi says that the reason why it's mutter, Rashi says in the V'mascha Shoiver, the aim b'mekalkel shum issa b'Shabbos. In mekalkel there's no issa b'Shabbos. And the Rishonim, the Ran, the Rash, and others is, what does Rashi mean? Mekalkel is still osmi rabon. What does Rashi mean? Aim mekalkel shum issa b'Shabbos. So a lot of G'dolei Achronim, the Avenezer, the Chasam Sofer say that what Rashi means over here, the aim mekalkel shum issa b'Shabbos, Rashi means the Shitosai, that the Isser of binyan v'stira does not apply to Kalim, only to Karka. The only Isser that you can have by Kalim is makbeh patish. But when you're just destroying something, where there's no makbeh patish, that there's no Isser. So according to Shita Rashi, we understand the Mishnah is very posh. But the question is, if you hold now like Rashi, La'alocha, it's before in Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber Paskins, and Shin Yud Gimel Siftes, Hatikei Eitz Beitz, Bein Shetokah B'Mesamer, Bein Shetokah Beitz Atzmoy, Action is achet, how is it told us by that's a timsa of taka, and Shulchan Aruch is clear that if someone is tekeah two items together, two kalim together, and makes it like one kali, then you chayiv al tzbayna. Could be you can have makah patish also, but the zikr is bayna. So it's clear la halacha that we pass like the sheet of the Rishonim that there is binyan stira bekalim ba'ifin of the kuah. So the question is, comes back to the question: what is the pshat in the Mishnah? What is the heter of shoiver adam as a chavos? So Taisvis addressed this question. Tais in Erevin, Tais in other places, and Taisvis says that you have to say that the Mishnah is talking about a case of mustaki. It's a kli that's a mustaki. We'll get to soon exactly what the nakuda of a kli mustaki is, but the point is, it's a very shvach kli. It's a kli that's made up of shivrei chavis. That means they put together a chavis that broke and you put it together, you glue it back together. So it doesn't have the cheshivas of a kli. And such a kli, there's no way to sizer. But a regular keli, a kli bria, avada, there would be a problem of sizer. And obviously, if you do an oifen a kilkul, it'll be only shal drabonon. But there's no way heter to do kilkul on Shabbos. But the Mishnah is talking about a hechatimtza of a kli mustaki that doesn't have the cheshivas of a kli, and therefore there's no isser sizer. That's the shitas taisis pshat in the Mishnah. The Rashba and other Rishonim bring rayas that the Mishnah is talking about any type of kli, not dafka or kli mustaki. Now, obvious question is, what's the pshat in the Rashba? The Rashba sheet himself is that there is binyan estira bekalim, at least wifen of tekua. So why does the Rashba disagree with Taisis Havana? That the Mishnah has to be talking about mustaki. So Bemes, this machlokes Tais and the Rashba is really l'shut t'sayu. It's going to go through a bekitza because Mushavi Doilim saw it when they learned Shin Yud Gimel. The shaila is if you hold ein binyan estir bekalim. So what happens if it's ba'ifin tekua? Why is that worse? What makes that we hold that yesh binyan estir bekalim? So Taisva says many places that the Nakuda is, places Shabbos Kuv Beis, for example, that the Nakuda is that ein binyan estir bekalim doesn't mean that you can't have binyan estir bekalim. Ein binyan estir bekalim just means that kli is not like a karka. Kli, you have to have much more of a chashivus in order for it to get a Torah's binyan. And Taisva says, ba'ifin, that, for example, I made a full kli that has chashivus, or I made a gevaldigo eiftu, that I made something stekua, that gets a cheshivas of binyan. If I hold ein binyan estir bekalim, I don't have such a cheshivas. Taisa says, ein chiluk. This Taisa is Kuf Beis. Ein chiluk ben kelim lakarko, ela b'mokam shein chizik b'omnis. The bekli loy choshev binyan, bekarka choshev binyan. But everyone's masking that there is a musik of binyan estir bekalim. It's a question of how much you need in order for something to be considered a binyan. So according to that, Taisa holds that if you have a fartige kli and you destroy that kli, about you did a gewaltige destruction of the kli. You were seiser kli and ganzen. That about a Taisus holds that there would be a problem of binyan estir bekalim. And the only heter that is possible to say in the Mishnah is that we're talking about a chetimtz of a mustaki, and a mustaki is any bechashivas kli. But you look at the Rashba earlier goes like the Shita Ramban. The Ramban holds really that ain't binyan estir bekalim across the board. Now, Vos Ramban says a big yisod. That's the chiluk between binyan estira bekalim or oisakli. That the klal is ein binyan estira bekalim. When you have a kli and you're working with that kli and you're making some type of binyan of that kli, the klal is ein binyan estira bekalim. But when you're creating a kli, that's not called binyan estira bekalim. It's the creation of a kli. When it's a creation of a kli, when you're creating a whole new thing, that the Rashba holds and the Ramban holds, that has nothing to do with ein binyan estira bekalim. That's to do with you dealing with a kli. It has to do with binyan estira of creating something, and that's a whole different halacha. So according to that, when you're talking about you have already a kli, so just like the Ramban, the Rashba holds, you have a kli, and I'm adding something to it, or I take something off of it, that's called binyan estira bekalim. So within, if I have a fartig kli in front of me, and I destroyed a kli, that's also called binyan estir bekalim. So maybe they held there wouldn't be any problem over here, mitzad soiser keli, and maybe the Mishnah we're talking about even a kli that's bria. So what comes out is we have here three mahalchim that we can understand pshat in the Mishnah. Either you go like Rashi. The Rashi holds ein binyan estir bekalim across the board, and if there's a halacha of certain cases that there is a problem, for example, tekua, that's because over there it's makabeh patish, which obviously in the Mishnah, when you're destroying something, there's no makabeh patish. According to the sheet of Taisus holds that really there is binyan estir bekalim, but it has to have a much more of a cheshivas than karka, and therefore dafka, if it's tekua or you created a whole kli, that's what Taisus holds that there would be a problem. So maybe if I'm destroying a whole kli, like Taisus, that would also be a problem. And maybe the Mishnah has to be talking about a case of a kli mustaki. Kli mustaki is ein bechashivas kli, and therefore the halacha is that there's no problem of stira, but if it would be a kli bria, there would be a problem. The sheet of Ramban and the Rashba is that the only problem of binyan estira that we find is only when you're creating a kli. And they hold by tekua, they hold that's called you're creating a kli also. Mashenke, when you have a kli that's a fartig kli, and you're eating something to it, or you're doing something else in the kli, we hold ein binyan stir b'kelim, and therefore they hold huadin. If I'm destroying a kli, there's no problem, and therefore they hold the Mishnah could be talking about a kli bria. So obviously it's a big nafkamina between these two shittas. Is the Mishnah talking about dafka kli bria? According to the sheet of Rashi, it could be talking about even a kli bria. According to the sheet of Ramban, the Rashba, it could be talking about even a kli bria. Mashenkin, according to the shita of Taisvis and the Rosh, is talking about dafka kli mustaki. So how do we pass? So we already said before that we don't pass like Rashi. It's Mefurish and Shin Yud Gimel, Sif Tes, that we hold that there is binyan estira, bekalim ba'ifin of tekua, or other ifanim that is considered chizik vomnis. So if there's a Mishnah here that says they got to be shayver, either we have to learn like Taisus or we have to learn like the Rashba. So who do we pass like? Do we pass like Taisus or we pass like or the Rashba? There's obviously a big nafkamina. Could you break a kli bria on Shabbos to get the food out? So we have a mechaber. The mechaber says in Shin Yud Dalet Sif Aleph, ein binyan stir b'kelim, v'hani mili she'ein binyan mamish gein chavis shenishbra the divik shvareh bezefes yochel l'shoivel likach masha b'soicher. So Mechaber says clearly that the din of the Mishnah is only talking about a case of mustaki, something that doesn't have a cheshivas of a kli. Mashenkein, if it would be a kli bria, it would be a problem. So Mechaber clearly paskins like the shita of Tais and the Rosh. The Ramah Lake Su over here, Hagosh ina machsekes aboyim so. Now the simple reading of the Ramah is that the Ramah is eating another Tanai. There has to be something that's not 40 saw. Because something is 40 saw, that goes out of a Torah's kli. There's a stick like karka. We find many places that something that's 40 saw has a din of karka. And he holds that this heter of a kli mustaki is only when something has a Torah's kli. But something that doesn't have a Torah's kli has a din of karka, there's no heter. So you have to have tartil tivusa to be makel. First of all, that it's a kli mustaki. And second of all, that it has a Torah's kli. Mashenkin, if something has a din of karka, there didn't want to be any heter. That's the Mogen Avram, Bemis Muchas, that where's the Makar, where did the Ramah get the second? Tonight, we don't find any Rishonim that say these two trying back upon him. That's the simple understanding in the Ramah. The Goyin has a different shot in the Ramah. He says, that's not what the Ramah is saying. He's saying what the Ramah is saying is he's coming to argue on the Mechaber. The Mechaber says that the heter over here is because the Kli Mustaki. So the Ramah, no, you're making a mistake. The heter over here is because it's in machzekes aboyim so. That means it's not karka. But kol kama that it's a kli, even it's a kli bria, it's going to be mutter. So the Goyin holds that even though the Mechaber paskins like the sheet of Tais and the Rosh, that the Mishnah is only talking about a kli mustaki, but the sheet of the Ramah is that the halacha is like the sheet of the Rashba and the Ramban, that the Mishnah is talking about even a kli bria. Doesn't mean Rashi, because Rashi is Mefurish in the Mechaber, and the Ramah doesn't argue that it pass binyan stira ba'ifin of tekua. But ba'ifin of stira of a whole kli, the Ramah holds it's gemota even by kli bria. So like upon us, we have a Mefurish Mechaber that holds kli bria is also. We have the pashtus of the Ramah is agreeing to that. He's just adding another Tanai. But the Goyin learns that the Ramah is coming to be Moisif a kula and says by kli bria there's also a heter as long as it has a Torah's kli. So the pashtus is about that we hold like the Mechaber, because the more pashtus that argues doesn't argue on that. But the Mishnah Berurah L'maisa brings down in Sifkot and Zion. Mishnah Berurah says brings down the pashtus of the Ramah that he says bia agra hiskel apaiskin is feel the ein stir bekalim I feel like shoysa shvir bekli shlema im lo shoysa kli ade shvir das chayiv akapon kli am shmaka patish. So Mishnah Berurah brings down the Goyin. Mishnah Berurah is not passing like the Goyin, but klal always is when the Mishnah Berurah brings down a shita and with the name, he's just telling you should know there is such a shita. Obviously, the Goyin is a very big shita, but he's not passing that way. If he would say v'achroinim kosru, then he's coming to pass that way. He's not coming to pass that way. He's just saying that there is a shita of the Goyin, which obviously is chazal isrufei for this roof. So the pashtus is that you have a kli bria, there's no heter to be shayfer. But besides the Goyin, we do find others that also are mefakfik on the Mechaber b'chlal, that the Mechaber is machmer on this. The Korban Nesanel in Perek Chavis, I say, is matmiya on the Rosh and the Tur and others that are machmir. He says the Beis Yosef in the Akdama makes a klal that when we have three shittas that he bases his sefer on: the Rif, the Rambam, and the Rosh. And when you have Roiv, he goes like those shittas. He says over here, you have the Rif and the Rambam, whole like one shitta. So he says, how can he now bring down B'chlal that shitta? So he says, Akaponim aniyoim ladina alidei tzirv hetakal ani esmach al devreim lahat lishver klishon loisa eichlon afilach atchila kainil anis daita. The Sanel says that if we have a tzirv kal, I'll be soimich to be making like the shita of the Rishonim. He brings the Rambam and the Rif, which I'm saying to shita of the Rashba and Ramban also. The same thing the HaRav in Siv Zayin brings down many Rishonim that hold the Mishnah is talking about even by Kli Bria, brings the Rambam, the Rav, and others. And he says for Shemati that there are people that are makel to be shoiver even a Kli Shalom. And he says the Chayra, they're doing something connected to Shulchan Aruch. But he says, "Lanias daite ein ligel behem." You shouldn't scream at them. They shall das habern mesenu het the gomer. And it brings the Rashba holds that way. The Kaf HaChaim also in Shin Yudal Sifkat and Hey brings down the Kabbalah Sano, and he feels like also the B'Shasat Chak u'mitztayer she'elam ha'lechol yesh l'smoich al ha'makilim. Moshe also in the Truvas Chelik Aleph Siman Kuf Chabeis on the field also brings down this Aruch HaShulchan. He says, "Ulai elu anoigen heter apir ros chochem and limchus biyodem chenkos Baruch HaShulchan." So Akaponim, what comes out is that the Ikra Halacha is that we paskin that the Mishnah is talking about Afka Mustaki. That's the Mechaber says, and that's the simple understanding in the Ramot. The Ramot just meisif another Tanai that has to be a kli, not something that's 40 sod that has a din of karko. But we do have Rishonim that are makel, and we have some G'dolei Achronim that hold, either we hold like them, that's the sheet of the Goin, he holds like the sheet that if it's a Kli Brio, he's still allowed to break it. And we have the Kabbalah Sano and the Aruch HaShulchan, they both say that they hold the really Mikra, then we should pass it like that. So upon him, the Tzir of Kal, like the Kabbalah Sano says, or like the Aruch HaShulchan says, that Ein Limchois B'yar HaMakil. So we have some room, if someone does it, that Ein Limchois, but Avada, we're not trying to do something that's only a get of Ein Limchis. We want to do something that's the Kalach. Oh. Be'emes, we find a very interesting thing. We find the Mechaber in Shin Yud Gimel, Shin Yud Dalet, Siv Zayin. The Chamer brings down a case of Chesomes. And there's a Shviris B'Secher Shel Tevis, brings down a Machlekes if it's Mutter or Nasser. And he says, Yesh Lahato Yedei Akum. So Mishnah Berurah's Masba, what's the Machlekes? He says, this sheet that you can make a Yedei Akum, what's the heter? It's talking about something here that's a Kli Bria. What's the heter to break it Yedei Akum? So he says, this sheet is going with those Rishonim that hold that a Kli Bria is Mutter Lishma. So he says, even though the Mechaber Pascha is not like them in Sefer Aleph, but since there are many Rishonim that hold that way, Yedei Akum, it's Mutter. So it comes out we have here, the Mechaber himself is willing to be Mekel, like the shita of the Rishonim that are made by Kli Bria, Akaponim, and they goy. I mean, you can tell a guy to do it, even though something that's osur, you can't tell a guy to do it. Even if it's only Shaul is Rabban, unless it'll be Nichla on the Gedorim of Shus to Shus, the Mokam Mitzvah, Mokam Hefset. But here the Mechaber doesn't say that. B'chol in the Mechaber's mashma, that's Mutter. Now the Mogen Avraham brings in the Mashal, that's Matzamtzim, the no. The Mechaber, you can only be makel to have some Ruba, or you need the Sarach Mitzvah, which basically really means that we're making a tzimtzum that it's not across the board that we make a Yakum. Good. Maisa, if Mr. Berurah brings it down, good. Maybe there's a more of a mocker to make a Yakum more than a regular case, because like we're saying, the going holds mutter even a day so. The Aruch HaShulchan says Ein Limchos if he does it. We have the Kabbalah Sano that holds a day tzir of kal you can make it. So they going is probably there's much more of a mocker to make it. But the shail is, what's the heter, or if there's a heter to be makel, are they yit? The B'derech Tal, the Kalim that we have, is not a Kli Mustaki. It's not a Kli that's made out of Shivrei, Kli Chavis. So the Shail is there a heter? And if there's a heter, what is the heter for someone to break such a Kali? And why isn't there a problem of Saisa? No. So in order to understand this, we really have to understand what's the Nakuda of the Gemara of Kli Mustaki. What's the Nakuda? Is the Nakuda there's some Shvachkeit in the Kalim? That's the simple understanding. Like Rashi says in Beyo that you medabik shivrei the shraf shaleis. They took some shraf of the eights and they medabik the kalim together, and that's how the Mechaber brings it down. So the simple understanding is that there's some shrachkeit in the kli betzim, and that's what makes it a kli mustaki. And that's why there's no Isser Sais is such a Kli. You have our Kalim, you have a can, you have a box. It is a part of the Kalim. You have a can that can last for many, many years. It's hard to hear that that's a Kli Mustaki. In the Tilo David, Shin Yudalis Sifkot Yud Beis, when he brings down this din of Mustaki, he says, according to this, our Kalim that we have, he says Fidloch, Sardalinach, he's talking about sardine cans, and similar type of Kalim. He says that's Pashut, that's like a Kli Bria, doesn't have the heter of Mustaki, and Abada, it would be a problem. The same thing in Moshe, in Chelik Aleph Simukov Chavbeis, where he has a murder Ketruva, that he goes through the Sugya Mamash L'Okel Rachboy, and it's more in the Truva there, it's a double Pashut to him, that our Kalim, that are strong Kalim, is Pashut that they have a din of Kalim Briim. That's not Nichlal in the Geder Mustaki. On the other hand, Shlomo Zalman, Shita was different. Shlomo Zalman in Shmir Shabbos, Perek Tes Hor Yud, the same thing is printed in Mincha Shlomo, the same idea in Chelik Beis, Simin Yud Beis. Shlomo Zalman held that our Kalim, that the derech is that after you finish what's in there, you empty it out, and people throw in the garbage, he holds that also has a din of Kalim Mustaki. That means he holds a din of Kalim Mustaki. It doesn't have to be there's something inherently wrong with the Kli, that's a shvacha Kli. No. The Nakuda is that it doesn't have a cheshivas of the Kli. See, it's just like over there. The reason why it doesn't have a cheshivas of Kli is, of course, there's something inherently missing in the Kli, some shvachkeit in the Kli. So, well, then, if you have something that the derech is to throw it out, what we call disposable kalim, that itself makes it that's ein b'cheshivas Kli, and would also have the heter of Mustaki. That's the shita of Shlomo Zalman. Others bring down the Yashav also held that way. So it comes out, according to them, there will be another sword to be made on our Kalim to break it, Labat, the Shita of the Goyin and the others that held like the Rishonim, that you're allowed to break a Kli Bria. Even like the Rishonim that hold its Asur, but he holds our Kalim that the Derech is to throw out, they have it in a Kli Mustaki. Even though it's not the Metzias of a Kli Mustaki, they are strong Kalim, but since the Maisa, the Derech is to throw out, it has the same head, because Amy B'chashivas Kalim. But like I said, Moshe and others didn't go with this heter. So the question is, according to them, if there's any heter to be made. So Moshe himself, in the Tshuva, has a whole different heter. What's the heter? Moshe bases the heter. We have a Gemara on Kuf Mem Vav. The Gemara brings down a din of Chaysolis. Chaysolis shall groigers shall Tmorim. It's like the containers that they held of groigers and Tmorim. So it says you're allowed to be matir mafkia v'chayter. It means you can cut the ropes over there on that. What about the Kli itself? The Kli itself, we don't know anything about cutting it. It's not discussed in the Gemara. But in Shulchan Aruch, in Shin Yudal Tzefches, says that Pila Gufan Shachaysolos, you're allowed to rip apart. Why? Because Shulchan Aruch says it's like you're cracking nuts that you're allowed to crack it to get the food inside. Or shkate. Very interesting zustel. Breaking a Kli is like you're cracking a nut to get the food inside. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. And the Makor is the Kolboy. So the question is, what's the heter? So HaRav says the heter by the first case of Chesol Shel Tmorim is that since they only put it there that the food should get ripe in there, the Tmorim should get ripe, it doesn't have a cheshivas of a Kli. The Pri Megadim is Mazba because it doesn't have a base kibble, doesn't have any cheshivas. But the Pri Megadim says, but what about the second case of Shulchan Aruch? Shulchan Aruch speaks about two cases. It talks about Chesol Shel Groigris, tomorrow. So tomorrow the Magen explained. What does the Magen do with greatness? He says you have to say that's talking about the case of Kli Mustaki, which is very interesting. The two cases of Shulchan Aruch, and the Machar brings out one heter, because like you're breaking a goyim, and it's two separate Teirim. One heter is because of Kli Mustaki, and one heter is because it doesn't have a base kibble. This is felt in the Kli. Maybe fart, it's a similar heter. The Til David, Takas and Skasha, and he learns that both talking about a case of Mustaki. The Shulchan's mashma that he learned that way. But Moshe is not nicha to learn that way, because it's very not mashma that we're talking about Africa Kli Mustaki. The Mechaber doesn't say we're talking about Streichet Imsa. And B'yoyser, the Mechaber says, which is Karsan Kolba, he tells us to a goyim, just like you're allowed to break open the nuts to get the food. The same thing, this. What does this have to do with breaking nuts? So Moshe, because of this, says a Mordig Chiddush. Moshe says that you have kalim, that the tachas of the kalim that produced is to be able to put the food in, to take it from the company to the store, from the store to the house. You take the food out, and then you throw out the kelim. He says those type of kelim don't have the chashivas of a kli. We look at them that like a wrap around the food. Doesn't have a Torah's kli to it. And that's what the Mechaber is telling the Tzu, that it's a halakha of chisolis. Similar to Moshe says, other places also such a musik, that such type of things that you throw out doesn't have a Torah's kli. There's a true Minchas Yitzchak says the same idea. So it comes out, Moshe holds that our kelim, about to be made mitzad and mustaki, they're not mustaki. They're kelim briim. But they have a different heter. They go into the heter of Siv Zayin, of chisolis. Chisolis means that there were certain types of kelim that they used to store the grapes and the tmorim in. And as soon as they got ripened, they got dried out, they threw it out. So the tach of the kli was just to hold the food until it got ready. Those kelim don't get a cheshivas of kelim, and he understood that's the yesod of all our kelim was to head to the break, because all our kelim, no one reuses a keli. Our keli just meant to store the food till you get it from the store, and then you throw it out. So it comes out, getting back to the question that we started off with, what's the head to break our kelim? What happened to the isser of Saisa? So it comes out, like Rashi, we said, there's no problem, because Rashi Shita is that there's no promise being a steer period. The only problem you could have by kelim is if you make a kli, or you put together kelim boif into kuah, because then there's a problem of makapatish, which obviously you don't have when you break it. We said we don't pass like Rashi. It's mafurish and shinyu gimel that we pass like the sheet of the shainim that there is being a steer kelim. But then we said there's two other terim. Either you have the heter of the Rashba and Ramban, because being Seiser Kli, there's no problem. The only problem is when you're creating a Kli, but Seiser Kli, there's no problem. And you have the sheet of Taisa, we're talking about Mustaki. And the Mechaber Kipshut, they paskin like the sheet of Taisis. And the same thing, the Ramah goes with that. But we mentioned there is a goyim that learns the Ramah argues and paskins like the sheet of the Rashba, that even by Kalim Briim, there is a heter. And we said that it's Chazal's Terufei for other Terufei. But that itself is not a heter. Maybe I did goyim be mutter, but that itself wouldn't be a heter. But we have two kloreterim, one from Shlomo Zalman and Rabbi Yashiv, that they held that our kelim are nichla and mustaki, because mustaki is that the ene bechashivas kelim. Why is that bechashivas kelim? Because they're very shvacha kelim. So they said kelim that the derech is that you throw out right after its usage also is ene bechashivas kelim and has the same heter of mustaki. Moshe Kinira doesn't agree with that point, but Moshe says, but a kli that's meant just to hold the food, and after you take out the food, you throw it out. That's nichal in the other heter that the Shulchan Aruch brings down by Chesolis, which is the Kolbei holds that is doima to the goyzen. They allowed to break the goyzen to get the nuts in. The same thing, the Chesolis have that same heter, and that would be a heter by our kelim. So it comes out, our kelim, we have many heter, either that it's a kli bri, it's also mutter, or they have a din of kli mustaki, like Shlomo Zalman learns, or like Ramesh learns that the heter of Chesolis. So it comes out, the Kuli Yamar, there would be a heter to break our kelim. That's ba'ifin of shvir. But if you make a Pesach Yofa, that's the din of Mishnah. Then it could be a shayla, a makav patish, because then you're making a new shemesh in the kli. That's a separate issue, but we're not going to speak about that today. But the Vaila we read the shmuz why there's no problem of soiser and our kelim. Okay, if anyone has any questions.
Okay, so first of all, of the three heterim, would they require to make a hole in the can, or all these heterim do not require that? So it's a good question we're asking. So really, mitzad these heterim itself, as long as the way you're opening it up is not in a Pesach Yafa, it's not a nice Pesach, you're making an oifen of shvira, that wouldn't be a problem. Now, the reason why I know that was not that's the subject of this year, but we have many questions about this. Right. So I'll just get to your question. The reason why many Rabbanim tell people to make a hole is really based on a whole different reason. Is based on the shita of the Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish has a whole new problem with the sugya. That's something that's totally sealed, lost its Torah's kli, and that's a whole shir by itself. But it's not based on what we were speaking about today. It's based on a different reasoning. But mitzad, what we said today, it would come out, it would be mutter, as long as you break open the kli, not in a nice Pesach, you rip it open, even if you don't totally destroy it, there wouldn't be a problem. Now, it's possible there's other reasons why you have to destroy it, maybe because of Korea, but mitzvah we discussed today, you wouldn't have to do that.
So Lamaisa, cans are less important today because the materials of cans are just less percentage-wise. Let's move to the plastic containers, the herring plastic containers and things like that. So in the shul, you will.
Right, so those things also. Lamaisa, as soon as people take the herring out, they throw it in the garbage. You're talking about the big containers?
No, the small containers, the ones but they're sealed. You have to work hard to open them. And they come sealed in the Shabbos morning, and you have to start.
So,
what I'm talking about?
If it's possible that if you make a Pesach Yofa, that could be nichlam what the Mishnah says of Vashlei Skavalasas Kli. That could be a problem. But if you make it in a way that it's not a Pesach Yofa, I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a sardine container and you would open up halfway, right? That's not a Pesach Yofa. It's not so easy to get the food out that way. That wouldn't be considered a Pesach Yofa. Now, there could be a separate issue with the Chazon Ish, which we didn't discuss. The Chazon Ish holds that since a Kli is Otum, it loses Teres Kli. So however you would open it up, that could be considered Pesach Yof. But that's a separate discussion.
Let's put the Chazon Ish aside because we did discuss this. I'm focusing on the halach lamaisa of opening up herring containers. What's today considered to be a neck of yafa, and how do you make it? If you open up the kli, is this a neck of yafa? And soda bottle, soda can, which also is a tin can. How do you avoid making a neck of yafa in a soda can? How do you mitzvah? There's only one way to open it up.
So a soda can, if you would open it up pashtus, if you would open up the regular way where they make the markings, that would be considered a neck of yafa.
No, I mean pulling the tab off.
Right. That pashtus would be a neck of yafa.
So the role is my rabbi. You can't open a soda can in Shabbos.
No, I didn't say that. All I said was that's considered Pesach Yafa. It happens to be that there is a tshuva in Shlomo Zalman. The Shlomo Zalman wants to say that something that you drink it and miyad you throw out, he wants to say that's maybe even worse or better, however you want to say it, than mustaki, and that maybe there wouldn't even be a problem with Pesach Yafa. So he declares that maybe a soda can you would be able to open up regularly, but that's a very big chiddush and a lot to argue on that. So, but the right way to open a soda can on Shabbos would be not to open it up the normal way, but what you could do is open it up in a way that it's not so easy to drink from it, let's say halfway, but not to have it opening that you could drink from it very easily. It happens to be with opening up a soda can that way, you're getting into another shiloh of machatich, because since you're opening up a certain spot, the Yashav holds that it's a deraisa. Shlomo Zalman has a shita that he holds that when you're just opening up a spot that's pre-designed to open that spot there, because there's lines over there, he holds there wouldn't be a problem with machatich. That's a separate shiloh.
Okay, so Lamaisa, the soda cans, a lule, a big heter of Shlomo Zalman that says the zrika is matter, even the neck of yafa, you can't open them up.
Shouldn't open up the regular way.
A little bit.
Right. Correct.
Okay, so because HaRav just for the last discuss, I saw on your countries you have the soda juice boxes. Could you give us a little bit of insight into that for the island? The juice box where you stick the straw in through the silver foil, which raises another addition, possibly Korea. Can the Rav discuss that?
It's hard to discuss it because we didn't discuss exactly the issues of Korea, really.
Right. So, it's a belule de Korea, the sias kli, the juice box. Is that the same?
So the question is really, you have to really get back to how do we look at those cans? Or could be there's a difference of different types. If we look at it that there is a fartige kli that's made with a hole and then they're covering it with a piece of tape, so then it's like Korea or api chavis, that wouldn't be a problem. But if we're looking at it, that piece of thing that's on top of that comes an inherent part of the kli, then it's much worse, because then you're making a Pesach Yafa.
There's nothing on top of the silver foil? It comes with the silver foil exposed to the top? Don't you have to take
I guess that's what I'm saying. It will really depend on every single case. I don't want to answer just off the cuff without.
Right. So all the paiskim say yesh tayach, all these things to be chayshish l'shitas l'chazon ish, the Shmir Shabbos. Everybody.
I want to just mention one thing that it's really a separate shmuz. Really, anything we're talking about, anything you open, really everything has to be open before Shabbos, because everything here is a heter. But even that you could open for Shabbos, Avada is supposed to open for Shabbos. Now, a soda can, I wasn't massacring you what you said, because a soda can, if you open for Shabbos, there's nothing left of the whole soda. So
Right.
that attack I'm asking you that you would be able to open on Shabbos because you don't have a choice, because the fizz, everything's going to go out. You lost your whole soda can.
So why does not having a choice? So drink. Don't
No,
drink the soda can.
no. Not having a choice is not a reason to be makel. But the
Right.
point is, vaket. We have a chlora heter, but some mavur and the lavush and the shulta geboirim, all the achroinim, that this heter that we have in the Mishnah is only a heter l'tzorich Shabbos. So the achroinim say that according to that, if you have an eitzah to do before Shabbos, you have to do before Shabbos. But something like a soda can, you can't do before Shabbos. If you're gonna open before Shabbos, you defeat the whole purpose of the soda can. So that taka would be mutter as long as it's done. Boif and shvir is not a pesach yafa.
So are you telling me, Lamaisa, I'm not putting anybody in the spot here. Tyra and Lakewood are piercing the juice boxes before Shabbos with the straws? Is that what you're telling me, Lachila?
So I don't want to talk about juice boxes because it really depends on the juice box.
Each one, the CS of each juice box, right?
The problem with a lot of these things is that these things you open before Shabbos, a lot of them spill. It's a very flimsy type of things, and they spill all over. So it could be that's considered maybe you didn't have showers, as long as you have a clear head to make it on Shabbos.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to get into that without discussing all the problems.
Okay, well, there's an interesting question here. Is there an Indian to pour the soda into a cup, then drinking it directly from the can? Does that somehow help and take away the cease to please?
There would definitely be some mileage to that. There will be some mileage to that. Yeah.
So if you're going to be Saimach and sorry.
Definitely there is some mileage to that, because the yesod of uvatli is kavalasas kli. The problem of making a pesach yofa, the chaznish's mazbe, is because you're making a new shemish in the kli. You're not just taking a timsa to get the food out. You're making a new shemish in the kli. You're making a spout in the kli. So if you're drinking from the soda can, it's now making a new shemish. You have a clear, you could drink from it. But if you're spilling it out directly, it's just a shvir, just take a timsa to get all the food out. So it definitely would be a mile to do that. Correct.
Uh-huh. And the same chayre then would be on the herring things. You should pour it into a plate and pour them out of the containers. Is there an Indian?
No, that's what I'm saying, because I didn't say mechuyev. You asked me if there's an Indian.
No, it's Indian. No, I'm not saying mechuyev. I didn't say the word mechuyev. Indian. I'm just saying the same thing. The same Indian would be, because from the Zalman Sefer and the cans, it was right miyad.
I'll explain you. Mitzad, what we discussed today, if you do it by a shvira, really there wouldn't be any problem to do that. Maybe by a soda can, even the way I said it, is not so clear that that's called a shvira, so maybe it would be mild to do it that way. But if you would have a herring can or something else that it's a clear oif and a shvira, there wouldn't be any need to do that. Now, of course, there's another reason why you have to do it. Might have to do it is because you have the problem of the chaznish. And because of the problem of the chaznish, there's a Minchas Hilchos and Shuva says that if you spill it out right away, I think it's true for a Braish also says the same thing, that if you spill it out right away, so then you're not making it even a Torah Skila de Chaznish. That addressing a different issue, but not mitzad the issue that we're dealing with today.
Which is what I was going to ask the Rav. When it says Lizreik, there's a mila to throw it out immediately. Second you take it out, because that or there's no mice to that, because everybody understands you use it.
It's not the point. It's not the point if you don't throw in the garbage the second after that, or throw in the garbage 10 minutes later. The point is that there's no more shemesh that's happening from the kli besides getting the food out. The same thing with
because when you eat herring at a kiddush is you eat the herring over 20 minutes. So for the second guy who's taking the third guy who's taking the herring had shemesh because he didn't get to it yet. So that's exactly
what I'm saying. So if you're dealing with the shiloh of an hour sugya, that is no problem, because the chiluk is if it's a Pesach Yofa or Shvira. If it's a Pesach Yofa, it's a problem. If it's a Shvira, there's no problem. I'm saying, but mitzad the Chazanish's problem, that it's a guf otum. And the only way someone to say the Chazanish was makel was because I'm not using the kli at all. I'm just spilling out everything directly. There would be milah for that. But not mitzad what we spoke about today.
Okay.